Good morning, good afternoon everybody, it's Amanda. How are you doing? Today is May the 8th, 2020. It's VE Day here and Victory in Europe Day, 75 years since the end of the Second World War in Europe. And I'm going to touch on a personal story linked into that, which I think has a lot to teach us. I think I'm going to title this video Moments of Pleasure, Moments of Life, I'm not sure. I've got the song by Kate Bush in my head and the song is Moments of Pleasure. It's a beautiful, beautiful song. I love Kate Bush. And there's a verse in it which says, some moments that I've had, some moments of pleasure. And then she goes on to say, just being alive, it can really hurt. And these moments given are a gift from time. And it's effectively a love story, a memory of looking back at some beautiful, wistful moments in her life. And it's a commentary on the fact that life can sometimes hurt. There's a card here which is about vulnerability. And I think this Scorpio full moon was very much about vulnerability and getting into our hearts. And that's why I put up the video yesterday from John Denver, which quite a few of you have already watched. I hope many more will watch it because I think there was a very profound message in there. And I want to talk about some of the comments that have come in on the back of it, including some which have been negative in nature, because I think there's great learning there. Because John's was the video that I did after the Duality video, red pill, blue pill, violet pill, which a lot of people have watched, which just started to introduce, and it was only introduce, this very complex subject, which is to do with duality and light and darkness within all of us and indeed within the world. And so I think there's another layer of teaching here with John, actually. I'm going to begin with John. The first thing that you need to understand is that as a channeler, as a medium, I don't really feel comfortable calling myself a medium, even though I know it is the type of work I do. I don't know, it just seems to conjure up an old-fashioned image of sitting on a big stage to me with a turban hat on and flowing cloak, but it's just not me. With regard to what I do, I feel as though I'm just having a conversation with spirit and I'm able to convey that and communicate that. But here's the nub. When you have a spirit, a soul, visit you, then it's very much like real life in terms of if somebody knocked on your door today and you allowed them in and you had a conversation with them, or indeed even if you met up with an old friend you hadn't seen for a while, or anybody, if you're sat in front of somebody for the first time for a while or ever, what you don't tend to do, what you wouldn't do, would you, is go in all guns blazing in terms of, and excuse, I'm just going to have to use some bad language here because it's the only way I can illustrate it. You wouldn't go in and say, I hear you've been an absolute shit in life. Would you like to tell us all about that? You know, tell me about that time when you cheated on your wife. Tell me about that time when you did this. Tell me about that time when you were a complete arsehole. You know, I want to hear all about that. And what has happened on the back of the John Denver channeling is because a message came through from him, which was very consistent with the way that he led his life most of the time. He was a human being, so he was flawed like all of us are, but most of the time the vast back catalogue of his work and what he did in his life in terms of his activism was about trying to bring in an energy of peace, talking to humanity about very deep spiritual truths, love, etc. On the back of that, there have been some comments which have said, yeah, but he was actually a real shit. Okay, and I want to address that because, of course, John, like anybody else on this planet, was capable, as are you, of being both the light, and also in isolated times, or maybe even more consistent times, but it still wasn't the whole catalogue of who he was, able to express his shadow very well. So, and the stories with John, in fact, I've read up on John since doing the channeling. You see, there's such beauty even in the shadow, because the FBI had to release a file after he died, which has been declassified, which they had compiled on John Denver. They'd been watching him, basically. And it ties back to the fact that he was one of the people that was protesting against the Vietnam War. The other two people, particularly at that time, who were protesting very strongly, I'm sure there were more, were John Lennon and Jane Fonda. So John Lennon, we know, was taken out. There's no doubt about that. If you've watched my channelings that I've done, John was taken out. And we know he was murdered. But the thing is, the guy that murdered him was programmed to do it by powers that have not yet been held accountable. Okay, so John Lennon was taken out. Jane Fonda seems to have dodged the bullet, literally. Whether that's because she's female or not, I don't know. It might be quite interesting to look into the energy of Jane Fonda one day. But yeah, John Denver had a FBI report released on his activities. But get this, guess how many pages there were in this FBI report? 33. Which just made me laugh, because 33, you see, is the energy of Christ consciousnness as well. So even the FBI report, it's got 33 pages. And, you know, I'm not laughing at some of the things that are said in that. I'm just going to light a candle here. He was somebody who had problems with drink and addictions to alcohol, as do many people. And indeed, if people aren't addicted to drink, he went through episodes of really struggling with addiction to drink. And some people might be able to resonate with that, because maybe you've had a battle with alcohol. If you haven't had a battle with alcohol, maybe you've had a battle with something else that you have used to try to dim the pain that you feel. And that's not to say that that is the way to do it, but it is what some people do. They try to blot out the feelings, the pain, through a number of different ways. Alcohol is one, as well as many other addictions that are out there, all of which really are about trying to run away from yourself. And if you are an empath, and if you are sensitive, you are going to feel things on a very, very deep level. And sometimes life can just be very, very difficult. So I suspect John was like most of us who, you know, from time to time struggled with being here, struggled with his sensitivity, struggled with what he saw in the world that he did not like, that he campaigned against. I talked about that in my video. But, you know, essentially was a good person. But yeah, so he struggled with alcohol. There is an insinuation that he also dabbled in other drugs as well. Indeed, in the FBI files just say they're unsubstantiated claims. Whether he did, whether he didn't, I don't know. You know, but the point is that what struck me was when my video went up, which was to do with his message of love and peace and trying to help us get into a peaceful place, there were a few people that came on and said, I haven't even watched the video yet, but you do know he was this. You know he was this shit, don't you? And to that, I want to say a few things, actually. I've got the passage from the New Testament, which is a teaching from Christ. And the teaching actually is quite blunt. It's quite a blunt teaching. And these are the words from the New Testament. And it actually says, you hypocrite, first take out the plank in your own eye, and then you will clearly be able to remove the speck in your brother's eye. It so perfectly follows on from my duality teaching, which is that I was presenting in that channeling somebody who essentially was a good man. He was a good man. He made mistakes. He had his flaws. But yet that message didn't even want to be heard. The person or people, there's a few of you, just wanted straight away to correct the record in terms of, no, you realise actually he wasn't that. And this is the teaching of Christ. First, take out the plank in your own eye, and then you will clearly be able to remove the speck in your brother's eye. Look at your own backyard, you know. Those without sin cast the first stone. We can't help ourselves as a species. We can't help ourselves as a species. And the things, I'm not judging the person who said these things, because I can see myself in that person. I have done that as well to people in the past. But somehow, to get off this wheel, we need to be able to recognise when we're doing it, which is why I'm calling it out really in this video. The truth about John Denver is, I stand by what I said, that I think he was a very enlightened soul, a very, very enlightened soul. But yeah, he was a human being as well, and human beings are always going to have, until we choose a different way, both the light and the dark within them. And it's to do with the balance. It's to do with the judgment that basically comes to you at the end of your days, where it is God who basically looks at what you've done and sums up, okay, you did these things, but actually you also did this. And on balance, how did you play it in this lifetime? John himself wrote an autobiography, or an autobiography was made by John. I can never remember which way round it is, biography or autobiography. But in it, he was completely and utterly honest. And in fact, when it was about to be published, his publisher apparently said to him, we actually think you've been too honest in this, John. There are things in here that you have admitted to, which actually is going to harm your sort of clean cut, you know, wholesome image. And we think you should remove it. And he replied along the lines of, no, it needs to be published in its entirety. And if I'm knocked off people's pedestals, well, all well and good, because I never wanted to be there anyway. You know, it's us that put other people onto pedestals. And as soon as you put anybody onto a pedestal, 10 times out of 10, they're going to fall off it because they're a human being. But yet we particularly do it to people that are in the spotlight, they're in the person, you know, in the public eye. The most serious allegation against John Denver, and it's not anything that I think he even ever denied. I think his ex-wife has talked about it, which is that he took a chainsaw. He took a chainsaw round to his ex-wife's house and cut up some of her furniture, and indeed attacked her. I don't think with the chainsaw, he attacked her basically. And it was an argument over, she'd cut down some trees basically on a piece of land, and it had obviously inflamed him, and in that moment he lost it. Now, again, it's that passage from Christ. It's very easy for us to go into complete and utter judgment on that and forget all of the good work that he did and just focus on that one thing. But really, it's about him and his wife. Was she able to forgive him? That's really the nub. And then also, was he able to forgive himself? Which I'm sure he would have regretted that action. So there's just, I just want us to be mature in the way that we approach people when they come forward in spirit, and choose, because it is a choice. They choose to sit with us, and they choose to come back and help us learn. And every single soul that comes forward from the Heart Squad, but to be honest, unless they're an ascended master or an archangel, they are going to have things in their life that they did which were not perfect. And so if every time we are graced with the presence of somebody that chooses to come back, admits their flaws, admits they weren't perfect, but on balance tried to do good, but end up just rejecting them because of one isolated moment, okay, one isolated moment, then we're going to have no teachers. We're going to have no teachers on the stage. And you can also add into that every single teacher that you're watching on YouTube, including myself, okay? There is nobody on this planet who has not made mistakes. There is nobody that hasn't acted in an aggressive, hateful, vengeful way at one particular moment in their life. And if you're a good person and you've chosen to try and hold the light in this lifetime, then you're going to regret those moments, basically. But it's about, do you allow that to define you? Do you know, I remember when I was getting divorced, I've been married before, and I was with my first husband for 10 years. The marriage broke down. He was essentially a very good man. He was a good man. I'm not going to go into why the marriage failed, because that's my business. But the marriage failed, and we had to live together for, I don't know, 3 months or so in the same house before, you know, everything got sorted out. So it was a very difficult period. It was a very strained period. And what I tried to do was just retreat into myself. And I remember one particular night where, and I can say this because this guy's not in my life anymore. I'm never going to meet him again. You know, we have no contact, so it's okay to say it. And he's not the father of my children or anything like that. But the point is that on one particular night, I was curled up in bed in the fetal position. I often go to bed in that position. So my back was, you know, to the side. I was curled up in a ball, and he kicked me in the back really hard a couple of times because he was so furious with me that I wasn't communicating, and he was furious because he was losing me, basically. That was effectively what it was. So I'm not condoning the violence that happened, but I understood why it happened, basically. And what I'm really trying to say is that I don't define him and the memory of him and who he was with regard to that one isolated incident that was, to be honest, completely out of character, was really bad, probably is something he has been ashamed of. He's probably actually completely denied it ever happened, I would imagine, but I know it happened. And again, we're back to a moment. We're back to a moment in time where a person can act in a way that isn't actually who they are. So does one thing that they do cancel out all the other good that they've done in their life, all the other times where they were kind, all the other times where they helped? I won't say my ex-husband's name, but you know, he was somebody who would always help. It actually used to really annoy me. He'd be the first person there who would be the helping hand, you know. I wasn't particularly spiritually awake at that time, and yeah, he was a good person. He was flawed, but he was a good person. But you know, I could equally, if I wanted to, just fixate on that moment where he was kicking me in the back. And he hurt me. He hurt me emotionally. He hurt me physically. I was stunned. I was shocked that he'd been able to do it. He was probably stunned and shocked that he'd done it as well. Am I going to define the whole relationship on that one moment? No, I'm not. I'm not. And so too should we not do that to other people, particularly people we don't actually know, you know? This is the thing with John, you know. Some of the things that are said, unless you're actually in a marriage, and unless you are actually there, you don't know. It is speculation. Even the FBI report, you know, it's unsubstantiated claims over and above what John has actually already said or did say in his autobiography. So the fact to me that John Denver was able to look his shadow in the eye, basically, put it into his autobiography, say, yeah, I was this as well. And actually, I realise this is going to knock me off a lot of people's pedestals, but it's fine, you know, because I'm a human being. I say, well done. Well done. I really do. Let's move off John now and onto another subject. I want to just fixate on moments, okay, moments in this video. So another moment, and I'm just going to illustrate it with another story, but I've got a few stories today, but I hope they're all getting the points across. Let's go to the big story because it is VE Day today. So it's Victory in Europe Day. And I'm only here because of VE Day. And that might sound like, oh yeah, well, you know, we're all only here because the Nazis were defeated, etc. That's true. That is true to a degree. You know, the world would have carried on, but it would have looked very, very different. And I'm very glad that obviously, you know, the Allies won, goes without saying. But no, I genuinely would not be here if it was not for VE Day. And the reason for that is that my mother was conceived on Victory in Europe night. And you might say, oh, that's a nice romantic story, that the times sort of fit that might have happened. And I will say to you, no, she was conceived on VE night. And the reason for it is that my mum's adopted. And on VE night, as I can't really imagine because I didn't live through it, but I can only attempt to imagine the outpouring of relief and the outpouring of the need to celebrate, the need to let your hair down after years of oppressive, heavy fear and worry. And the one day where, you know, victory in Europe is declared and many people took to the streets to celebrate, and some people took it a little bit too far. And some women will have had a little bit too much to drink, and some men will have had a little bit too much to drink. And so we don't know who my mum's real parents were. We know of them, but I never met them. She never met them. But we do know that it was a Scottish lady, very young lady, young girl, basically 19, I think she was, something like that. And she had a one night passionate one moment of pleasure. She had one moment of pleasure with I think he was a Canadian Air Force pilot. And it resulted in this lady getting pregnant. And it was the only time that she had behaved in that way. She got pregnant on that night. And she gave away her baby, which was my mum, a few weeks after she was born. And again, moments, you see, moments. What we know is that my mum was handed over as a couple of weeks old baby in a court of law. It's the way they did it in those days, because, you know, the real mother was unmarried. So anyway, her adopted parents were handed this little baby over by the real mother, and what became my mum's mum, the adopted mum, but obviously the real mum as well. I remember my granny saying to me, I've never forgot the look on this lady's face when she had to give away her child. And very, very sad, because she never ever reunited with my mother. But this is the point, moments in time, that moment, wild abandon, pleasure, hopefully, you know, conception, but then a moment, you know, 9 months later of having to give away this precious child because you can't keep it because you're unmarried. It wasn't the done thing in those days. And now roll forward 75 years and I'm here talking to you. I've got two beautiful girls who wouldn't be here if mum hadn't been born. And it's all to do with these just poignant moments that define us. What do we wish to be remembered for, basically? So I suspect that my mother's natural mother, I think she's dead. We have tried to find her, but I think she's dead. And I think that she probably went to her grave with a lot of regret and a lot of sadness over what happened. I just pick up a very sad life. But yet, if you look at it from a higher perspective and you look at it from a soul perspective, look at what that 19-year-old Scottish teenager effectively produced 75 years later. She produced me. I'm not saying that in an egotistical way, but, you know, I think I'm a fairly nice person. She produced my two beautiful daughters who are gorgeous and who are lights in the world. Was it a mistake? No, it wasn't. It wasn't a mistake. So I don't know. I just think we have to see the context. We have to see the context in moments, and we have to see the overall picture of life. We have to see where it all was leading, what it was all basically about. Yeah. So tonight in the UK, as a lot of streets are doing. There's sort of a bit of a rah-rah to sort of all, you know, get out there with your glass of wine, and social distancing, of course. You know, some of the houses in our street have got their bunting up, and the Union Jack flags are going up in people's windows, and someone said dress up as a 1940s person. I'm not going to do that, but, you know, stand outside and have a drink, and I will do that. But to be honest, what I really want to do is I'd just like to honour this grandmother that I never knew, whose name was Frances. I know her name was Frances. So Frances, shall I just light a candle for her? Let's do that. Let's light a candle for Frances, and then I'm going to light a candle for John as well. Hard to light with this. I'm going to burn myself. I'll have to do it off camera with this one. You see moments. I'm tuning into a few people like, come on, get on with it. Light the candle. No. It will take as long as it needs to take to light the candle. Don't rush the moments. Recognise the moments, good and bad, that happen in our life. Those that are challenging, those that are beautiful. Recognise them, learn from them. They make up the kaleidoscope of actually who you are, where you're going, what your soul is. So I'm going to pull a couple of cards for us now, as I'm here. I will just say I've been using this deck this week, which is The Journey. The Journey by, don't know who it's by. Has it got a name on the bottom? Laura Emily. The Journey. Trust Laura Emily, the happiness coach. Oh, sorry, Laura Emily. Okay, it's a great deck, actually. I've been using it this week, and I'm noticing these two, okay? Epiphany and vulnerability. It's like we're having this epiphany that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to show all of who I am, that I am the light, and also I can sometimes be a bit of a shit, you know? Hopefully not much of the time, but, you know, we are human beings. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to mess up. You know, imagine being, oh, there we've got John here. So I've got that card. That I think, did I show you that card in the John Denver video? That's him, the cowboy. You know, this is the thing. If you're in the public eye, oh my God, who'd want to be in the public eye? You know, every single mistake you make, and sometimes they're big mistakes, are played out. And then after you die, people are still going on about them. People still won't let them go. When you bring that person's name up, that the mistake is the first thing that they want to talk about. Those who aren't on my Facebook group, it was so amazing yesterday because, yeah, you know, I knew John was with me, and the video went out, and it's like a ripple of that soul's energy that goes out. When the video goes out, that soul energy is out there. It's the only way I can describe it. And so last night, yeah, Gary Barlow of Take That. Those of you that don't know who Gary Barlow is, he's been trying to cheer up the UK, and every night he's been doing something called the Crooner Sessions. And he's just there on his little keyboard, and he's doing a song every day, and he's bringing somebody in to sing with him remotely. So like a split screen, as in Zoom, and they're singing a song. Well, of course, yesterday, it's Annie's song. Annie's song, John Denver. I'm damn sure Gary Barlow had not watched my video. I'm damn sure he knew nothing about the energetics that were at play yesterday, because that's what it was. The energetics were at play. John's spirit was here. John's spirit was soaring. John's spirit is still here. He's still sitting here, actually. I've got his photograph there, and it's just, I just love that when these little things happen. Oh yes, and then Taj Jackson last night, he did do his live stream where he was taking everybody through Michael Jackson's 10 favourite songs. One of them is Fly Away, John Denver. It's just like, what are the chances, you know? I just love it. Right, let's pull some cards then let's pull a card from the Journey deck. put those two back in. It might come back out, one of them. Let's just see. So where are we? We're at the 8th of May, 2020. Change. Change is about to happen. Change is about to take place in your life. Jump on it. Jump on it. Sort of says what it is, isn't it? And look at that one on the bottom of the deck as well. I've not seen that card before. Lost. So some people are feeling quite lost. The universe is soon going to show you a new way, so be ready. If you think about today's date, Victory in Europe Day, can you take yourself back 75 years ago, and can you imagine what it must have felt like to have, the war was over, but, you know, there would have been so, although people were exhilarated, of course, because the war was over, so much uncertainty, so many people feeling lost, so many men who never came back from war, so many families that had to regroup, so many women that would have been left just with the children to look after, with no male influence or love or support or partner, feeling totally lost. How the hell are we going to do this? And what the nations did is they just took their oars, they got in the boat and they kept on rowing. Rowing being symbolic for the fact that you've just got to keep on going. And, you know, the other very poignant thing, of course, is for Victory in Europe Day, is that there was this amazing moment of celebration and like, oh my God, thank God it's over and we've won. As well as, oh my God, look at the damage that's been done here. And then, I don't know whether it was weeks later, it probably was just weeks later, the great reveal in terms of, my God, the concentration camps, the discovery of what had actually been going on there. As an empath, as a sensitive person, oh my God, I can't imagine what that must have been like to have had that first exposure to, we've won the war, we knew there was a cost, but actually look at this as well. Look at this. Look at how low man sank. Look at how low man sank. Look at these victims. Look at these people who are still alive. You know, but within all of that mixed emotion, they kept on rowing. They kept on rowing because otherwise we wouldn't be here still standing, you know. Yeah, we're in lockdown. UK, you know, people are thinking Sunday, Boris is just going to say it's another 3 weeks of lockdown. I think that's where we're heading. We've got at least another 3 weeks of lockdown here in the UK. And that's happening in other places around the world as well. It's nothing. It's nothing compared to what this last generation went through in terms of the war. It doesn't mean that what you're going through isn't difficult and challenging and real, that jobs are being lost, that poverty is in our midst, that there's huge uncertainty, there's a lot of mental health issues. There are real problems now. But it's almost like, look back at the ancestors, look at how strong they were. They live within you. They live within you. You've got that grit that they had to keep on rowing, okay? A lot of them aren't still alive. You've got that. So change is coming to our world. Yes, of course, change is coming to our world because nothing ever stands still. See the fact that, yeah, Spirit knows we're feeling lost at the moment. But it's like, change is coming. Get ready for it. Let's pull one more card to go with that. I mean, I'll say pull one more card. Okay, we've got the card of peace. Can't get away from John's message of peace. The two Johns. I want to call them the two Johns because I've got John Lennon here as well. It's like John Lennon and John Denver, you know? Peace, you have come a long way. It's time to rest for the next chapter. That's actually quite a good message for today and Victory in Europe Day because, yeah, war still exists around the world. Of course it does. Fighting still exists around the world. But in terms of Europe, we effectively, there's not been another world war yet. Hopefully there never will be again. But it's saying you've come a long way. It's time to rest for the next chapter. It feels like it's a moment to pause today. It's a moment to pause, to reflect on who we are, to reflect on our moments that we've had in our life. I've shared a couple of my moments that I've had in my life with you, you know, and even moments that weren't mine, but are mine because it's in my DNA. My grandmother that I never knew, she's within me. You know, it's always been this story in the family. There's this lady in Scotland who at 19 gave away the baby. Oh, it's you're the baby mum. You know, we don't know anything about these people. We don't know anything about the family that we've got probably in Canada or in Scotland, or it's all lost. But it's okay. It's okay. Sometimes I'm realizing I've got my shirt on saying together, because the thing is, we are all together in here. That's what I'm feeling. we have done family trees and things. I don't need to go and find these people. They're all here in my heart. They're all here in my heart. There is no separation. If somebody has died, they're still here in my heart. The people that you have lost, they're still here in your heart. Your ancestors are still here in your heart. But so too in your heart is your light, but it's also those times where you look back and you think, oh my God, I did that, did I? The hell, why the hell did I do that? Why the hell did I say that? Why did I behave like that? And now can you imagine being a celebrity? And every time your name gets mentioned, it's like, oh yeah, they did that. As Christ says, you hypocrite, first take out the plank in your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck in your brother's. There's no escaping. This is tough teaching. Duality teaching is tough teaching because it's about stop projecting. Why do you need to just keep repeating negative things about negative people, not negative things about people, rather than focusing on your own stuff? Today's a chance to reflect on that. Let's end with a spray. I'm not sitting in my room, so I haven't got that many sprays around, but what have I got? I've got the air elemental. Should we have a bit of air, John? Anything you want to say today? Just bring John in again quickly. There we go. His energy is just so sublime. It makes me want to go to sleep. In a good way, John. It's so soothing. He's just showing me this river. And the river is just gently moving on. And there's fish flying in this river. So I guess I'm in a part of America. It's certainly not the UK. And there's salmon leaping in this river. And the river has got sunlight on it, of course, sunlight on the water. And the river is symbolic of life. That when you hit the rocks, is what he's saying, when you hit the rocks, and the rocks imply the challenges, the rocks imply the mistakes, the rocks imply the shadow, the rocks imply your own darkness, your own fear. Just allow God and allow Spirit to navigate you around and through those places, because the river will keep on flowing, life will keep on flowing, you will keep on flowing, your soul is ever learning. Just let the current guide you. Be at one with the current. He's now just shown me the open sea. It's like the river's just become this open sea. And of course the sea is the oneness. The sea is all of us. It's like we're all in our own little stream. We're all in this river. We're all in this flow. And effectively we all meet at the sea. All rivers lead to the sea. And the sea is oneness, co-creation, God, the universe, and all aspects of who we've been. And very much like the sea, he says, there are the parts that you can see which look turquoise and sparkling and gleaming and inviting, and there's the stuff on the seabed and even beneath the seabed that is the deeper, unprocessed emotions and shadow that we all hold. And how you deal with that is important. Take God's hand and trust, and be the best version of yourself that you can be. Thank you. And then he's just doing this. He's just like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Beautiful. Moments with John. Moments with life. Moments with ourselves. Tonight, Victory in Europe. Just have a moment to remember the ancestors. Honour them. Thank them. And raise a toast to them. I'll be raising a toast to my ancestors that I know and those that I don't. And I'll be toasting the moments in my life that have been good and also the moments that have been not so good. They've made me the person that I am. And I also think we should raise a glass, which can be non-alcoholic, of course, for the moments to come. The moments to come. Much love, everybody. See you next week. Bye-bye for now.